Recently, we were fortunate enough to have the chance to interview two of the creators behind Pokemon Sun and Moon. Junichi Masuda, who's the game's producer and also assisted with the music, and Shigeru Ohmori, the game's director, and they had a lot of interesting things to say. So we've put together a list of the top 10 most interesting things we've learned from them about the development of Pokemon Sun and Moon. So let's get right to it. Okay, so Ultra Beasts are something that's brand new in Pokemon Sun and Moon, but we don't know much about them. Because, according to the developers, no one in Alola knows what they are, and figuring that out is a big part of the story and setting. Wait, setting? What does that have to do with anything? Unfortunately, the developers weren't saying. But, when we mentioned that the Ultra Beasts felt a little alien in nature, the developers said that the way they're introduced and appear is very strange, and conveys that they come from a mysterious and different place. And they even stated that the outside feel is intentional. So yeah, they're pretty mysterious. With Sun and Moon being only the second generation to feature full 3D Pokemon, we were curious how the design process for the Pokemon themselves has evolved, so to speak. And according to Mr. Masuda, it's changed quite a lot. He explained that for the first 3 generations, they used to design the Pokemon as pixel art right from the get-go. But that changed with Diamond and Pearl when they began doing the illustrations and design separately before translating them into pixel art to display in the game. But with the advent of 3D in X and Y, they had to begin thinking about how the Pokemon would appear in 3D, even during the illustration phase before making the models themselves. So there's a lot more for them to take into consideration these days. Mr. Ohmori then elaborated on the design process in general, noting that the ideas for the Pokemon themselves come from a variety of different team members, and those ideas can spring up for a variety of reasons, such as someone just wanting to use a specific animal as inspiration, or maybe the story requires something specific at a particular moment. Or in another example he gave, a battle planner might need a Pokemon to fill a specific role in battle, including for balancing reasons. In fact, there are so many ideas that they have to work really closely with the designers and artists to find the right mix and balance of Pokemon. But it's exactly because so many people contribute ideas and requests that they have such a wide variety of Pokemon in the games. Okay, so we just had to ask about the post-game, and perhaps not surprisingly, they didn't tell us much about it, saying that they want people to enjoy and discover it for themselves. That's fair enough. But Mr. Ohmori did elaborate that the team put in their all with this game, with each individual feature having been fleshed out to make sure they have a lot of depth. He continued that they really want this to be a game that people enjoy for a long time. And when we asked about character customization specifically, Mr. Ohmori confirmed that there will be a lot more options than the X and Y. One of the more unique things about Sun and Moon are the Alolan Forms that reimagine classic Pokemon in new ways. And as it turns out, the timing of their appearance on Pokemon's 20th anniversary is no coincidence. As according to Mr. Ohmori, the 20th anniversary played a key role in their development. He said that it inspired them to reflect back on Pokemon and what they are, being living creatures. And that's when you realized it would be interesting if Pokemon that moved to the Alola region adapted to the environment in unique ways, similar to real-world animals on the Galapagos Islands. And when we asked why they focused exclusively on Pokemon that first appeared in the Kanto region, Mr. Ohmori explains that it was simply because they were the most recognizable to long-term fans, and because of that, were best suited to express the unique evolution concept. Mr. Masuda then added that the Alola Forms are a sign of their appreciation and a special surprise for the fans that have been with them for the entire 20 years. According to Mr. Ohmori, with this being the 20th anniversary, as well as his first time as a director on an all-new generation of Pokemon games, he really wanted to go back and look what he thought the Pokemon games should be, and have his own take on them with Sun and Moon. He realized that the gym battles were essentially human versus human, and may not be the best fit for the Alola region's more natural setting and theme. He explains that, in going back to the theme of this really powerful and abundant nature and the Alola regions, he felt like these trials, where you encounter these really powerful wild Pokemon that are essentially the bosses of these areas, and having to beat them as part of your journey would be an interesting concept. And by changing this up, from the gyms to the new trials, the game's going to feel fresh for veterans of the series and new players alike. So with this being the third round of 3D Pokemon games, the developers mentioned that they wanted to challenge themselves and take the series to new levels of graphical expression. And as part of that, they ended up creating a completely new development environment and rendering engine for Sun and Moon, which allowed them to give human characters more realistic proportions and have trainers appear alongside their Pokemon in battle, on top of implementing full analog movement too. All of this was done in order to make players feel more immersed in the Alola region. And speaking of the Alola region, where did the Hawaiian influence come from in the first place? Well, as it turns out, Mr. Ohmori occasionally visits Hawaii in his personal life, and whenever he's there, he described feeling an overwhelming power of nature, and specifically cites a strong sun and the impressiveness of the ocean. And it was that feeling of this really powerful sense of nature that he wanted to bring into the world of Pokemon, which he explained also helps express the relationship between humans and Pokemon and how they can live closely together in these natural environments. We also asked Mr. Masuda about how the Hawaiian setting influenced the music, and he responded that, although he primarily worked on the ballad music, one of the things they focused on was the rhythms of traditional Hawaiian music and conveying a feeling of warmth. When we asked what inspired Z moves, Mr. Ohmori noted that he thinks that there are a lot of Pokemon that maybe weren't getting used very much previously that are now going to be used by players. And that was the ideal he had in mind when creating Z moves. He wanted to have a much more varied battle environment and allow for a lot of new strategies as part of that constantly shifting environment. He continues that, for the main story, they really focused on the player using the Z moves, so that players can learn what those are all about. And that takes us to our next point. Okay, so given that Z moves appear to be a focus of the main game, the developers explained that you won't gain access to Mega Evolutions until after you finish the story, which will then further deepen the battle environment so that you'll have this combination of Z moves alongside the already super powerful but specialized Pokemon Mega Evolutions. One of the main philosophies of Mr. Ohmori and Game Freak in general is that they always treat each Pokemon as if they were current. The first generation of Pokemon aren't treated any differently than Pokemon from later games. They're always seen as a natural aspect of the environment, reinforcing that this is a single interconnected world. And that's shown yet again with Sun and Moon, as the main character begins the game by moving to Alola from Kanto. But the developers didn't want to just appeal to fans of the series, but the anime too, and especially kids, which is why Ash Greninja appears in the recent demo. It's become such a fan favorite that they wanted to use Ash Greninja to encourage those kids to try the games and imagine themselves in Ash's shoes, just not as Ash. And there seem to be even more surprises in store. After all, when we asked if other characters from past games would return, they simply said there would be lots of surprises for fans of each generation. But as for who or what specifically could appear, they simply asked us to wait and see. Finally, we asked if there was another yet-to-be-revealed rival. And we asked that because it's a little bit weird that HAL takes a starter Pokemon that's weak to your own. That just doesn't happen in Pokemon unless there's multiple rivals. So could there be another one? Well, all Mr. Ohmori said, and I quote, "I don't know about that. I can't really say. Please discover it for yourselves." So read into that as you will. So there you have it, the 10 most interesting things we learned about Pokemon Sun and Moon from the creators themselves. But do you want even more? Well, you're in luck if you do, because we actually posted the entire transcript of the interview in the description below, so give it a read for a few extra details that we didn't cover here. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe for lots more Pokemon Sun and Moon and other things gaming too.